Hashpati Singhania. A very warm welcome to you all to yet another edition of the popular Leaderspeak program, the 34th in its series of such programs. I'm pleased to welcome in our midst today Mr. Sunil Munjal, Chairman Hero Enterprise and author of the award-winning book, The Making of Hero. Mr. Munjal, it's always a pleasure to have you with us and many thanks for agreeing to do this session. I must share here with you that we've had the highest registration so far for any Leader Speak session on Zoom, and this is not counting the social media channels. While you need no introduction, Mr. Munjal, yet, I need to have something to do, so here goes.
Actually, I don't think you should be doing this. At AIMA, you should not be doing this, but I'll leave it to you.
I know, but I think we have some friends who are joining for the first time, so I think a little introduction is going to be good. An outstanding business leader, a social entrepreneur, and an angel investor, you're a very versatile person. You have been a central figure in the emergence of the Hero Group, an automotive powerhouse, and now you are supporting India's young entrepreneurs and innovators with funds and management know-how. Your passion for education and skill development has translated into founding and nurturing a modern global university and a leading training company. A man with a taste for tradition and creativity, you lead Ludhiana Sanskriti Samagram in your hometown, and you have promoted an annual festival of art and culture in Goa, Serendipity. You're also in the process of setting up one of India's largest cultural museums in Delhi, which would also boast of live events. Now, you have also turned into an author and business historian. You've written The Making of Hero, Four Brothers, Two Wheels, and a Revolution that Shaped India. And your maiden book has won the prestigious Tata Literature Festival's Business Book of the Year award. All of the above is enough to make anyone's head reel. Not sure how you manage to find enough hours in a day to find time for all your passions, many of which I haven't even mentioned, and still find time to lead AIMA's international work and also act as an advisor and go-to person. I'll take this opportunity to also say a big thank you to you for always supporting AIMA. We all are truly grateful. We are really delighted that you've managed to squeeze time for us today and joined us to discuss your book and the evolution of Indian entrepreneurship across time. Before I move on to hand over this session to Mr. Hashpati Singhania, President AIMA, to take over the proceedings, we'd like to show everyone a short audiovisual on the making of Hero. This film recreates efforts made by the Munjal brothers to build sustainable businesses through relationships and how the foundations they laid helped create a world-class organization. Let us take a look at this audiovisual on this exciting journey.
From the bylanes of Kamalia and the rugged landscapes of Quetta, they escaped to India with little more than the shirts on their backs. In the partition-ravaged cities of Amritsar, Agra and Delhi, 4 of the 6 Munjal brothers, Dayanand, Satyanand, Brijmohan Lall and Om Prakash, built their business part by part. Armed with nothing but self-belief, the brothers began with trading and then manufacturing bicycle parts, which soon evolved into the production of bicycles. For post-independence India, the Hero bicycle gave wings to the aspirations of the common man. By 1986, 30 years after its inception, Hero Cycles became the largest bicycle maker in the world. In the next 15 years, the motorcycle venture, Hero Honda, repeated the feat, and both pole positions are held firmly even today. Hero's story is about humble beginnings, the refugee entrepreneurial spirit, hard work, and zeal. It looks at how four brothers with little formal education created a world-class enterprise. This is the incredible tale of a principle-driven organization that created exceptional value for a society that desperately needed transportation. How did four brothers with distinct personalities work like a cohesive unit and build a manufacturing behemoth? How did they synchronize their strengths? How did they resolve their differences, if any? The story goes deep inside the family spirit, the parivar, that brought together employees, customers, channel partners, suppliers and local communities to create success, welfare and well-being for millions. This is the making of Hero. Four brothers, two wheels, and a revolution that shaped India.
May I now invite Mr. Singhania to take over the proceedings of the session.
Thank you, Rekha. Am I clearly audible? Okay, good. That was truly not just a wonderful film, but truly, truly inspiring, awesome. So, Sunil, congratulations again on this, on your family's achievement and what you have done. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I have great pleasure and honor to actually do a very special session here today, to conduct a very special session. That where my dear friend Sunil, Mr. Sunil Kant Munjal is speaking to us, sharing his experiences. I introduce him first as a friend, then as a past president of AIMA and of various other bodies, national and international, CII and everything, and he's actively involved in AIMA still. Sunil, thanks very much for taking the time to do this. And it is really something, and congratulations on the newest feather in your cap, which is the award-winning author one now, and really wonderful. You know, Sunil, the book, you will talk more about it, is really, it is so appropriate when I was reflecting on it with AIMA. And the book or your family story is not just about any entrepreneurial story. You know, there are many, many. But it's about how, from a family, if I was to look at it, they put in place, along with their entrepreneurship and spirit, a common sense, practical, rooted to ground experience of your parents' generation, along with a building of a unique management system, if I may say, one that is grounded in values, in Indian ethos, and what is now transformed, if you see the journey over the decades, into an absolute world-class system comparable with anywhere in the world. And ladies and gentlemen, the fact that Hero has been the world's top #1 motorcycle company for about 2 decades, the fact that it makes almost 10,000 two-wheelers a day, etc., are all facts that point to the reality that this is not just family enterprise and the grit and determination of people, but there is also a method to the madness, and therefore, which has got this success. And therefore, it is very appropriate that for our AIMA series of this, the story of Hero, as would be unfolded by one of the people involved with it, a family member, in terms of Sunil, itself can be talked about in this. So Sunil, we are very keen to see this. And by the way, the challenge still remains from bicycle, the opportunity that your father and his brothers had, Brijmohan uncle had, in going to bicycle parts, to bicycles. And then when the opportunity came to manufacture two-wheelers, when the government was liberalizing that space, you got into it with 4-stroke motorcycles when everybody else did 2-stroke, because they were probably cheaper to make. And then the economy and the history, and now with electric vehicles. And of course, the group has got involved with many, many more things. But with digitization coming in, there is a new challenge. Are we selling a product? Are we selling a service? Are we selling mobility? Are we selling, conveniences? So, and every generation, if I again bring it back into our management thing, is that the newer generation of professionals that are running the company, of indeed the founding family members who are overseeing that, are also much more digitally savvy. So how does that provide the next level of transformation for businesses overall? So there are many, many things that I can go on, but Sunil, I have said enough, and I would like to once again warmly welcome you on behalf of everybody here at AIMA, and look at the kind of attendance we have today, and high quality attendance as well. So all over to you now, Sunil. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Harsh. And thank you for that very warm welcome. And my compliments to you, to Rekha, and to AIMA for setting up this wonderful series. And I did not realize, Rekha, that it's already 34 sessions that you've done. And I know that there have been amazing sessions because I have attended a few of them. For me, as I said, AIMA is like home. So you did not really need to give me that formal welcome, but it's always a pleasure to spend time with friends and have a conversation. And I would like to have this as conversational as possible, but you had asked me, and Rekha had asked me to talk a few minutes about the book, so I shall do that. So this book, I've been asked a number of times how and why you chose to write this book. This book actually has been in the making for a very long time. We used to get requests for a book to be written, and I'm going back for the last 20, 30, 40 years. These requests have been coming continuously from many, many people from many places, economists, business leaders, business schools, consulting firms, even leaders from the country had made requests to my father, to my uncles, to myself. And my father's reaction always was, that's not right. It's not right to talk about yourself. That is not our culture. And the request would come again and again and again. Finally, after he was 90, he actually agreed that it's okay to get a book written. And we had to convince him that it's not about you. It's about other people learning the possibilities of what can be done, because what has happened in one generation is certainly worth talking about. Because please remember, as you saw in the film just now, like millions of others, there were also refugees. And that, as you know, was the bloodiest transition or migration of mankind ever in the history of this planet. But interestingly, if you see, a lot of the entrepreneurial energy in the northern parts of India actually came from the refugees, because I guess they had a point to prove to themselves. In this case, the business did not start with any grand plan. It started just as a tool for survival and to provide for the families. From there, it went on to grow, I guess partially because of the culture that they brought in and partially because of the extreme hard work that was done and a sensible foresight as to the direction they kept giving. Okay, we have some mics unmuted. Raghu PV needs to mute.
Can I request everybody to mute themselves, please? Thanks.
So
Sorry,
going back
Sunil,
for a little bit to the book itself. So after my father agreed that it's okay to get a book written, we picked a team of authors. And unfortunately, they were busy doing another project. They said, give us a little while. We'll finish that project and come back and do this. And they took a while finishing the other project. By the time they came back, unfortunately, it was too late and we lost my father. And the requests for the book still kept coming from other people that why doesn't the book get written? And we thought about it then that since he had agreed that the book probably should be written, and then I thought that if a book is going to be written, frankly, who would know more about what's going on than somebody who's inside the system? So I took on this interesting, exciting, and a daunting challenge myself. And I'm saying daunting because please remember, this story goes back pre-partition. For any of you who have read this, it actually starts quite early. And those facts are facts before I was born. So just gathering and getting the facts straight was an amazingly interesting experience. I spoke with lots of people, hundreds of them actually, family, friends, business colleagues, government officials, senior leaders, friends of my father, friends of my uncles, those who were around. And it was interesting how on some of the facts, different people's perspective was completely different on the same thing. So I said, look, I will take license as an author and pick what I think was the correct fact, because it also has to tie into a thread into a story. And of course, many of these were stories that one had heard at home on the dining table or, you know, at other times in family gatherings, because we used to have lots and lots of family gatherings. That's one of the things I think you alluded to, how a family does business and stays together as well. And so I talked to my brothers, I talked to my mother. She was very helpful, by the way. I have to tell you, it was great to get some of the facts verified by her. And I spoke to my cousins, my sisters, and that was for me a most enriching experience. It was like reliving a lot of history. And history, as you know, can be both painful and can be amazingly delightful. And there was a little bit of both in the history. And I've referred to a lot of that in the story. I tried to be as straight and honest as possible. And in fact, many people asked me, why did you not write the book only about your father? Why is it talking about all of them? And the fact of the matter is that my father must have received recognitions, degrees, awards, hundreds of times. And so did my uncle and my other uncles. And each time he would go up to the stage, all he would say is, this award is not mine. It is for the entire family. My brothers, my nephews and nieces who are working with us, all the people in our companies, our suppliers, our dealers, our service providers, etc. And as I had started writing, by the way, I first did start writing about my father. Mr. Rai, who was our earlier MD and now vice chairman at Hero Cycles, he came to me. He's saying, "Sir, हम किताब क्यों नहीं लिखते? चारों भाइयों का कितना interesting story है." I said, "I've already started. I'm actually writing a book already." So he, you know, hummed and hawed, and he said, "मैंने भी शुरू किया हुआ है." I said, "Okay, let's put these together and see what happens." So we kind of pooled everything. And then I started writing again. Midway, somewhere he kind of backed off, but he is in some sense a co-author with me because there is a number of chapters in which he has a significant contribution. So then I thought about what he said, and I thought about what my father used to say. And I said, frankly, the right thing to do is to write the story about them and not about him alone, because that's what he would want. He won't want the story to be everybody's story. So in the book, each individual has been credited with what she or he did. And it is a story, as you said, from bicycles, parts to bicycles. And by the way, there were many other stages. They also went to mopeds and moped parts and automotive parts, and then went to motorcycles. And in the interim, we also tried other things. We set up a spinning mill, and we've had plenty of interesting experience, including failures. The best learning in our life actually came from failures. I've referred to some of them in the book. And that was one thing I found about them, both my father and my uncles, that they were very young at heart and in mind always. Some years ago, I took the idea to them that we should restructure the family business. And because this is a subject on which, as you know well, I have been lecturing for the last 30 years around the world on family-owned businesses. And first reaction they had was of getting upset. Getting upset and saying, look, people give examples of our family, how the family should live together, work together, be friendly. And you're talking about separation. I said, yes. How many families talk about it when they are at this situation? Please think about that. Most times, when families have a restructuring or a separation, it is usually a bitter experience because either the business is declining or the family is fighting amongst themselves. So, and we have a very large number of people in the family, and every next generation is brought up differently and encouraged to be more independent minded. And they are very smart young people. Let's give them an opportunity to demonstrate their entrepreneurship, to demonstrate what they've learned. Because if we have given them the right values in our homes, they will be fine. We should let them be. And the interesting thing is, after a couple of weeks, both of them called me separately and asked, are you sure this is good? I said, look, I have looked at this from every angle and in every country and every culture, that the right thing to do is do it at the right time or create an environment where you never need to do separate. And that will get harder and harder in a country like India, where the changes are taking place very rapidly, both inside and outside the family. And to their credit, they both said, if you think it's right, then we must do it. Not only should we question it, then we must do it. And that's how we started the process of restructuring the family-owned business. And when we did, at that time, we had 32 companies and 7 of them were global leaders. As a philosophy, we have always chosen to not make public announcements of things that we are going to do. Even things that have been done, there are only 2 things that are announced. One, that have a regulatory or a statutory requirement. Second, where the business is either a consumer-facing business or there is a business requirement to announce it. Other than that, public announcements have never been made. And that philosophy, I think, had held us in good stead. And we hope to continue to keep that same practice. Even though the family has restructured the business, ownership of the companies is separate. To your point you're making, we're encouraging the next generation to follow their hearts and their minds, but stick to the philosophy and the value system that the founders actually set up. And those have been very good values. Values of looking at people as the biggest asset that exists in our companies. Values of fairness, values of making and retaining relationships, values of looking after the ecology and the environment, looking after communities that live around us, and the ecological system that lives around us. For example, in Hero Cycles, 40 or 50 years ago, we set up the first effluent treatment plant. And you know, this is long before it became fashionable or became mandatory or was even talked about. And there was no technology available. Technology had to be brought from Germany, and an engineer had to be brought from Chandigarh to come and put this plant up in Ludhiana. And people questioned, why are you doing this? Why are you wasting money on things that are not necessary? Because in those days, whatever was the discharge from any effluent was just pumped into the drain. That was normal for everybody, by the way. So that is the reason in the title I said, this is in some sense a revolution. what we talk about today, made in India or make in India, actually is something they were practicing at that time. Setting up a super efficient supply chain system, working with vendors to help them improve their process, working with dealers to create an information system which was current to the very day, long before computers came. So if you look at many of the current contemporary management practices and governance practices, both were in place many, many decades ago. So in some sense, they were very, very much ahead of their time. And when you ask them, the responses were always simple. Why are you doing this? Because that's the right thing to do. So if you think about it, good business is actually usually just common sense. It's a whole different matter that common sense itself is not very common, as we know. So from their point of view, all they were doing was doing the right thing, but they were doing the right thing all the time, every day. So integrity and ethics were more important than many other things. Building and retaining relationships with suppliers and dealers and the people working in the companies. So if you go around our organization, you will hear the word family over and over again. This was the family. Everybody was part of the family. So when my father would stand up and receive an award and say, this is for my entire family, he was not talking about the Munjal family alone. He was talking about this entire family, which was the universe of Hero. So this book is a documentation. It's a series of threads which threads into one story, but it's in many concentric circles. It's a story about the family. It's a story about the business. It's a story about what was going on in India at that time and India's economy and politics. And it's a little bit of what was happening in the world. So for anyone who reads this, it's really up to them as to what they get out of it. Because on the one hand, you can look at it as a business book. You can look at it as a family business. You can look at it as a family story. You can look at it as a story of India, because in many ways, if you think about how India has evolved and progressed in the last 70 years, many of these are features and factors which were happening almost at the same time in the story of Hero as well. When I approached the publisher for the first time, he asked me, who is this for? Who are you writing this for? So I said exactly this. I said, look, I hope and wish that this is for as wide an audience as possible, because I don't want to write it like a business book only. It should be good for business. It should be good for consulting firms. It should be good for business managers and entrepreneurs, but also for just anybody who wants a good read. So he advised me then, don't make it too long. Don't make it too technical. Use simple language, use short sentences. So that's what I tried to do. So, and we were fortunate. The response, literally, as Rekha said at the start, from day one was quite good. It went into the bestseller list in week 1 itself. And a few weeks ago, I was at the airport taking a flight out. And I saw in that bookstore, they have these racks where they have the books with their rating and rankings. In the business book, it was at number 1 only a few weeks ago. And it was a delight to see that what's our Microsoft CEO?
Nadella there.
Yeah, Satya Nadella's book was number 2. So that, I thought that was so that was a pleasure to see. So I'll stop here, and I'm more than happy to take any questions, comments, criticism, and I'm happy to respond to whatever I can. But this is a pretty simple story if you think about it. But for anybody who chooses to, there are things to learn, because there are many experiences which are condensed in those few hundred pages. And I'm more than happy to receive suggestions, because this will go into a reprint potentially soon. But because the response was the way it was, we got plenty of requests. And now this book is actually coming out with a Hindi version in the next month or 2 itself, because it is now a year since the English book was out. Unfortunately, the events which were planned around the book had to come to a grinding halt from when the COVID-19 pandemic hit. but we have had a couple of sessions of this nature, virtual sessions. So hopefully at some time in the future, the situation will improve, because the pleasure and delight of turning a page and reading a book has no equal, except when you see the young people today who actually don't pick up even newspapers or books. They do everything digitally. So the book is also available in digital form. But for me, and I know for many others, a book is still something that you want to hold and turn a page. But thank you very much for inviting me here to have this conversation. And I hope this is this is beneficial for those who do end up. And by the way, here, since you're showing me the English one, here is the Hindi one, which is yet to come out. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sunil, for those very sort of behind the scenes insight in terms of how this really came about, because that is equally important for people to understand, and really very, very, very interesting. While we have, really, you are for this session, while the book is about your father and uncle's generation of making the hero, for this session, you are our hero. Because if I look at, and I'm not flattering you here, if I look at the participant profile here, I have not seen so many past presidents or a whole bunch of other people, very senior people on this program today. So really, it's amazing. And by the way, we didn't issue any whip like is issued in Parliament sometimes for people to attend. So this is all very voluntary, which is there. So Sunil, there are some questions here, and we do have a good 25 minutes plus for that.
Sure.
I will start off with a couple of questions which have been posted by people, and then maybe I'll turn to a couple of past presidents if they'd like to ask questions and so on and so forth. You in your remarks talked about the learnings of the family and failure. So there was a question exactly saying how to overcome failure. Any experiences that you have, because you've been part of this journey, or what you have picked up from the book? Let me put out a couple of questions so you can think around that. And so that was one question which came in terms of how do you overcome failure is one thing. The second is also in terms of, was there any common thing? What were the couple of common things between the four brothers? Now, you did talk about it again in terms of values and integrity, ethics, and so on and so forth, but maybe you might want to elaborate a little bit more in terms of what do you think these are. Yeah. Okay, let's put it here.
Okay, let me start with this, if it's okay with you.
Yeah.
So they were very similar and very different. So unfortunately, the eldest one, Dayanand, passed away in 1968. That was also the year Hero Cycles had moved to its new location where it is now, and held what was probably the largest ever dealer convention this country had ever seen. It was so large that there was no place that could be housed. So they had to build a mini city on tents, literally on tents. So it was a tented city. But they'd always been fond of doing things for people who work with them. So they had invited Mahinder Kapoor, and they had invited all kinds of performers and artists and singers to come in at that time. So it was they were, as I said, way ahead of their time in so many different things. Today's dealer conference, it's common to call entertainers and provide information and do this kind of stuff. So so the three of them, and my eldest Tayaji's son Vijayji was then considered one of the elders. So if I look at the three of them, my elder uncle Tayaji, we called him Pitaji. He was like the spiritual guide for the family. Every morning, before he would leave home, first he would do Havan at home every single morning. By the way, he was given the title Mahatma Ji by the Arya Samaj. And he would go to either the Arya Samaj or to one of the schools that we've set up. And after that, he would reach the office and the factory, and he would still be ahead of any one of us to get there. And he was a person who was absolutely ramrod straight. And literally, as I'm saying, he was the spiritual guide for all of us. My younger uncle, Om Prakash ji, was an amazing stickler for time and rules and responses and efficiencies. Amazing follow-up. If he once asked somebody to do something, you'd better do it, or else you're going to be asked again and again and again. And very good at accounts, very good at follow-up. He had a very quick temper, but equally he would lose that temper very quickly, and he would cool off just as well. And nobody minded because they knew that he meant well, even when he was getting angry. My father, on the other hand, had probably never ever got angry with anybody. In my entire life, I probably saw him getting angry 3, 4 times, 5 times at most in my entire life. And he had this amazing ability to make each person feel that they are a special friend of his. As I've written in here, and in fact, I said in our last AIMA gathering itself, as you know, people may not remember what you said to them, but they would always remember how you make them feel. So he had this special quality. The year he turned 90, we asked many of his friends and colleagues to write a letter to him, but I said, don't send it to him, you send it to me. And we said, we'll put it together in a book and present the book to him. And first, of course, we thought we'll present a book to everybody who writes a letter as well. But finally, when the letters came, they were so personal, they were so warm. Even we never realized how many people he had done things for, because he never took credit or never mentioned this to anyone ever. And so we actually printed only one book and gave it just to him. So they were, in that sense, totally different, but completely committed to doing the right thing, the ethical thing, and very good on their commitment, always. And very strong on family values. So that was their commonality and differences. The first question was about failures. So one of the biggest challenges we have as a nation, and I'm talking about us as a people, is we don't accept failure. If you look at the most successful innovation hub in the world, it's in the Silicon Valley in California. And the one unique thing there is, failure is not only accepted, it is actually celebrated. So many years ago, what we started doing, so let me just go back to our experiences, and that's a separate longer conversation about what I think India's society needs to graduate to. While we have the 3rd largest number of startups in this country, we are still not equipped to handle failure. Because anything or anybody who fails in India gets a permanent black mark. Company, a person, institution. I'm delighted that we've got this new bankruptcy law, so you can reinvigorate those things and those institutions which have failed once, because they have more experience than others. So in our case, we said none of us has a monopoly on good ideas. So there are 2 things which we've done actively. One is we partnered extensively with other organizations. Some of them became well known, like Honda, etc. But we've done many, many partnerships. And the second was we actively encouraged people within the companies to experiment all the time. And in town halls, people who had done something special would get called up. And those who had tried and failed would get called up in the same town hall and be given the exact same recognition. Because recognition was being given for trying, not for the success. Because once you start experimenting, you have no idea if it's going to work out or not. You might fall flat on your face. It could blow up. And if you don't accept that failure, you are never going to try again. And that was one of the cultures that got established, that trying is good. Failing is fine, as long as you don't make the same mistake next time. And there are hundreds of examples I can give you, but we don't have enough time today.
Thanks, Sunil. That was very, very interesting and reinforcing. Srini, are you here? Srinivas Dempo, I think you had a question turning to new challenges. Are you there, and can we unmute him? Rekha, is Mr. Dempo there, or? Yeah, I see him. I see him. Can he be unmuted, or Srini, can he unmute himself?
Sure, I can.
Yeah.
First
Yeah.
of all,
Go ahead.
congratulations. I think
Thank you.
it's a really inspiring journey. And though I haven't read it, I'm going to buy my copy and read it soon. Anything that you do is so creative, and Goa has been a beneficiary in terms of one of your biggest projects. The question I had for you today, Sunil, is managing between the four brothers, the dynamics, the larger family, and I know many members in your family. You are quite a large family. Did the elders ever think of how roles are defined, or whether there was a written family constitution? Because many of us struggle today as the family gets larger. How do you manage the family dynamics? Because one way, as you rightly said, we want our kids to be independent thinking. And then within the family, there should be rules and regulations. So how did your elders manage it so well? I mean, I just wanted some thoughts as what your
So it's a very good question. And as you know, this is a common dilemma across the globe for all family businesses, because the business by its very nature is a capitalist organization. You want the business to run on a market economy principle and be more productive and do well and be profitable. The family organization, on the other hand, is a socialist organization by its very nature. You want to do right by all the kids. You want to be fair to everybody, all members of the family. You want to give them equal rights, etc., etc. So there is a natural conflict built in when you try and create a family-owned business. And we all know there are different circles of influence which play on a family-owned business. So what was done in our family was that first, we were fortunate that the businesses kept growing. So there was room for growth to accommodate the roles of different individuals in the family. When our generation got in, then some of us got more active roles. So one of the roles I had played was handling part of the corporate office, first with my father and uncles, and then by myself. I also looked after the group office in the family office in that sense, in helping create things like succession, induction of next generation members, etc. So what we tried to do was first check the capabilities, interest, and passion of the individuals. We also said that anybody who wants to work outside of the family business is more than welcome. So we've got members in the family. One is a fashion designer, one is a chocolatier, one of my nephews runs a university. So we've got someone runs a not-for-profit, and we've encouraged all of them, by the way. And those who want to come in, we said, please go and work outside first and demonstrate your work ethics, your capability, etc. Then come in and either start at the bottom in an existing business, or you will get a small business to play a bigger role in, or you will get a troubled business to play a role in. So the idea was to put them in the hot seat and then create a criteria of their assessment, which is tougher than for a professional manager. So it's a longer conversation, and I'm happy to have that with you separately, Srini, sometime if you like. But we also said each member who comes in must not work with their parent directly. Should be with an uncle or a cousin. So you try and reduce the possibility of a inbuilt conflict. And many things worked. All of it did not work. As I said, we were always open and willing to experiment. And anything that didn't work, we would go back and try again, and then again, until it worked differently. And we were luckier than many others. Even when we restructured, that it went quietly, smoothly. And now if I look at the sum of the parts, it's much bigger than what the whole was earlier.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. And by the way, it's not as if there have never been problems, as you can imagine, with so many people, so many companies, multiple generations working together. We had plenty of challenges. All we said was, let's try and communicate and try and find a solution that works. And when they have such a large number, it becomes impossible to get unanimity. Then what you try and do is get broad alignment, which is good enough if the numbers are very large.
Thanks, Sunil. By the way, the question that Srini asked you has been posted by many people in different ways as to, about the family dynamics. Because I guess in entrepreneurs and business families which are there in India, whether they are small or big, this is a very, live issue
So
as
the
to how do
issues
we
are
manage it.
when you look at family-owned businesses around the world, about 80 to 85% of the issues are identical. The rest, which are different, are due to cultural nuances, what works in what nation, what works in what culture, what works in one faith. That difference is always there. But most issues are common. Interestingly, the solution, however, is unique to each family.
Okay. And I think that's a very interesting observation, because that goes back to, I guess, the priorities, or I should say the importance the family attaches to certain attributes. You talked about, for example, in your case, in your father's generation, and even now in your generation, integrity, ethics, relationships, and relationships not within the family, but in the larger, your entire stakeholder world, if you will say. And I know Brijmohan uncle, he was a family friend, and he used to talk about, hamare dealers, hamare, employees. He would know them by name, and these are all legendary stuff. And that's how this is built. Okay, another interesting question is regarding, change management. And how over the decades did you see this being handled in in Hero, and are there lessons from it for everybody?
So there were 2 or 3 things, I think, which actually were helpful. One was, as more members of the next generation came in, that brought in a little bit fresher, newer and younger thinking, which I think is always important. Second was that as a philosophy, my father had always insisted that we remain contemporary in our technologies and system and process all the time. So we were probably the first bicycle company in the world to get an ERP system. And we put an SAP going that far back, by the way. And the third was that reasonably early on, professionals started to get significant roles in the companies. And because that's one of the challenges that many families have, is that you always assume the leader of the business is always going to be a member of the family. And I think that's a big mistake that we end up making. And this is a global mistake. It's not unique to us. It happens more in India than some other cultures. It happens more in the East than in the West, but it happens everywhere. The reality is, if I'm an owner of a business, it is in my interest, it's in my best self-enlightened interest to make sure that the company is successful, because my value, my wealth, my significance lies through my business. And if therefore the business is to be successful, I should find the best individual to run the business, even if it is not me, even if it is not a member of my family. So we had a struggle with this, as every business does, by the way. There were a few times we found members of the families who were very, very fit, and there were times when we found some members were not very fit. So we tried to kind of moderate their roles in a manner that it was best suited for them and for the business. Again, as I said, for the other things, we were fortunate that we were successful more often than not, but we were not successful 100% of the time, I should tell you that. But the roles of professionals coming in played an important, it was an important turning point too. Today, of course, we have many board members who are former employees of the companies. Many of the companies are headed by professionals. So we said the test for us is when every member of the family behaves professionally and every professional feels that they are a member of the family.
I think that is superbly put. That is superbly put. Now, before I go on to some past presidents, there is one interesting question also which has come up, and it says that, in the chapter of the Hero-Honda partnership, you mentioned somewhere that the Hero team actually went to look at the prospect of scooters and then ended up with motorcycles. How did that happen? Was there, we talk about strategic planning. What happened? What was the strategic plan around that?
So what happened was, as you said earlier, the government of India opened a window for a short time for two-wheelers to get partnerships from overseas. So lots of Indian companies wrote to the global companies. Honda itself had over 140 requests from India, by the way. And if you looked at the list of names, it read like a who's who of Indian business. So they did not, of course, talk to 140 companies. They quickly brought the shortlist down to about 20, but they spent a lot of time with 20 companies. I mean, and the 20 companies were big, major companies. In fact, of the 20, we were probably the smallest of the companies that they were talking to in the last shortlist that they had done. And India used to be a scooter country in those days. So like everybody else, we thought it would be a great idea to get a scooter partnership. And after all the assessment that they did, they said, we want to make two partners in India. And one was the Firodia family, the Kinetic group. And second is the Munjal family with the Hero group. And we have already, they said, discussed with the Firodias that the scooter would work very well in that region, because please remember that Bajaj was already being manufactured right next door. And we will work with you guys for motorcycles. That was a shock, by the way. So my father picked up the phone and called my uncle here back in India. And he said, this is what is happening. So my uncle said, chhod do, leave it, you come back. But the way my father was built, he said, maybe chala lenge. Let's just get it. And let's get a product which is super efficient then. That's when the 4-stroke and 2-stroke thing happened, by the way. He said, if you're going to get it, we will get the best in class product that India has not seen. And please remember, in those days, motorcycles were considered unsafe. A lot of people would say, I don't want my kid to go on a motorcycle. I don't mind they're taking a scooter, because if they have an accident, then it'll be trouble. And also very often you would find people dragging a motorcycle which had a puncture in those days, and scooters had a spare wheel, which motorcycles did not. So when the designing was being done, incidentally, they had originally offered a different product from one which finally was picked. And this was a contribution by my father and my brothers, both Raman Bhai Sahab, my eldest brother, who passed away. And then subsequently, Paman also then got involved. And as you know, Paman was already involved in two-wheelers in Majestic Auto at that time with the moped business. And so they actually said, these are the attributes which will work in India. And of that makeup, Honda then picked the closest product, which of course became legendary, the CD100, which came in when most motorcycles in India gave 15, 18, 20, 25 kilometers to a liter. This one, under ideal conditions, tested for 94 kilometers to a liter. But that was not what was advertised. What was advertised was 70. And our marketing team got very upset when my dad insisted that we 70 karenge rounds. So with the bargain, what happened was you announced 70, almost 100% of the users got more than 70. So everybody said, look at this amazing thing. Because in India, please remember, service was not a concept in those days. Customer service was almost unknown, because we lived in an environment of everything being short all the time. So getting the motorcycle in many ways was a blessing in disguise. It drove the organization to be much, much more innovative. There are many things which were done later on to make the two-wheeler business successful, but it did go through a very difficult first 5 or 6 years, as you may be aware.
Great. Just to go on a little personal note, I remember in the early days when this was happening, one of my late uncles used to tell us at that time, कि ब्रिजमोहन लाल जी से मुलाकात होती है, वो मैजेस्टिक वाला हीरो मैजेस्टिक के समय बोले भाई साहब ये तो बिल्कुल they are selling like hot cakes, बड़ी चल रही है, आगे future mobility होगी. So it is all the what you see and what you're able to make of it is what you are saying. May I ask now? I see that Mr. Atmaram Saraogi, our oldest past president of AIMA, was here. If he is still there, Rekha, can I ask you, Saraogi ji, to ask a question? And you personally been very much involved with professional management.
Can you
still there?
Mr. Saraogi, please? Shivam?
Is he still there?
Yeah.
Yeah, he is. So if we can unmute him, and I think he has his video on, and we can.
I think he's not unmuted.
Yeah, he's not unmuted. So Raugi ji, can you unmute from there?
Ma'am, sir has the right to unmute. Yes, yeah, he is unmuted.
but has he?
I don't think I can unmute.
Yeah, we can hear you, Mr. Sarogi.
आगे, आपकी आवाज आगे जी. I can hear you. Sarogi ji, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
ऐसा है कि Sunil has answered almost all the difficult questions which have been raised about the family, professional management and everything. I can only say that what he has mentioned is in an ideal situation, and I have been fortunate in having this kind of an atmosphere in many of the organizations, because I have always worked as a professional manager, I decided to work as a professional manager, not as an honor manager.
Thank you.
Ji. But I can tell you, we did not always have ideal situations. We've had, as I mentioned, plenty of challenges, plenty of times when we did not agree with each other. But we said our final decision should be in the larger interest. If you can maintain that, it becomes easier to find alignment. It's not always easy, but it is a little bit easier.
Yeah. Sunil, can I have your permission to run over about 7-8 minutes, unless you have another pressing call that you've got to make?
It's fine. Yeah, we can.
Yeah, because we have a lot of interest here and a lot of people here.
Sure, I'll try and keep my answers short. I think
No. You've not been long. You've been pretty succinct. It's just that there's a lot of interest from people. Mr. Rajiv Kaul,
Thank you, Mr. President. Sunil, as always, it's great to hear from you, and I've had the pleasure of going on a trip with you on the launch of the book in Kochi. But what I would just like to mention here, rather than ask you a question, Sunil, is I would like, all the hundreds of people, hearing directly on the AIMA platform and perhaps many more on the social media as to truly what a wonderful leader and person your father was. Unfortunately, I didn't get to meet your chachas and your taujis, but your father was an outstanding personality, and amongst his leadership qualities, the quality of humility, despite having achieved so much in his life, stayed with him to the end. And Sunil, I think one very good thing about the leadership that you've inherited on him, and I've seen you as president of both CII, as also president of AIMA, is that you also maintain that humility in you. And I think since this is a leadership, webinar, I would say to all the people who are listening that one of the biggest qualities in leadership is to be humble, particularly when you've achieved a lot. So it's not really a question, Sunil. I'd like to say that, I've always been a strong admirer of your father. I got to know him well before I got to know you. And I'm also delighted that you've inherited that particular quality from him. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Oh, and Mr. President, if I may, one quick point. Please tell Srinivas Dempo that all the consultancy that he gets for free from his friend Sunil Munjal, he has to write out a check to AIMA for that.
Spoken like a true past president. Don't let an opportunity go away. Great, thanks, Rajiv. But thanks for pointing out this humility part, because I think it's a great whether professional life or personal life, it holds us in good stead. I see Dr. Juneja is here. Dr. Juneja, you yourself have been an author.
He also knew my father well.
Yes.
Dr. Juneja.
Is he unmuted? No, we need to unmute him. Or I think Dr. Juneja, you can unmute yourself perhaps.
Sagar?
Can he unmute himself?
No.
Yes, sir, he can.
Now he can.
Yeah, he's a co-host. He can.
No. Sagar is not unmuted.
Sir has the control at his end.
Dr. Juneja, can you unmute yourself? Or maybe
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
He's unmuted.
Oh,
You hear me
yes.
now?
Okay. Yes, we can. Boliye,
Okay.
sir.
Sunil, I heard you with a lot of care. And what you stated, you understated, I'll put it this way. I had known Brijmohan ji, let me say so, since late 70s when I met him first time in Ludhiana.
Yep,
And a lot of things I have. But one thing I can tell you, he always looked for big businesses. Let me tell you. I mean, in terms of thinking. When he asked him once in your greater class reasons that now from the motorcycle, you should now graduate to the cars and he said, we are doing well in motorcycles. But he told me that they had a joint agreement with BMW people. But he said, but I found the size of the business was so small, it was not worth it. And it was so therefore I like to stay in a business we can reach the masses like bicycles and motorcycles, that kind of stuff. So this is one thing. And like Mr. Kaul said about humility, that I concede. I've been meeting him for 50 years, I think, almost, and I've known him so very well. And he was a very, very fine person. For any advice, suggestion, you go to him, he will tell you very clearly and straightforward, this is what could be done, what could not be done. I've dealt with it a few times. And thank you, Sunilji. And thank you, Mr. President, giving me the opportunity to say a few words. Thank you so much.
You're right. So one of the things that they did, and they set the culture and the tone for, was businesses and companies that have scale, that have high growth, and the potential to be global leaders. Because we were lucky that in multiple businesses, we managed to get to global leadership positions. Of course, the bicycle and the motorcycle was very public and they were known, but we also did it in a few other businesses. So scale is a magic portion in any business, as you would know. Scale allows you to do things which otherwise may not be able to do. It allows you to have an influence on the system which you otherwise may not have. It allows you to get all the right practices in place. And that is like magic potion.
Fantastic. If I can, I think we still have a few more minutes. So I see Raju Kanodia is here. Do you want to ask anything? You are holidaying, I know, but you're doing your work as well. Raju?
I mean, look, Sunil is a personal friend, and I don't know what I can say in this. That
you can ask him for his secrets.
No, his secrets are what he is as a person. I mean, I don't think if you try to be what Sunil is, that's the secret of being what Sunil is, I would say. And I mean, I've also known his father, and all I can say is that he makes you feel as though you are a family member yourself. I mean, and as a very young person, I got associated with FICCI and other associations. And for a short time, I also spent a lot of time with Sunil in CII. And even though he doesn't know it, and I don't want to share it publicly, but there are a couple of sentences which he has mentioned in CII, which have had a lot of influence in my life. And I think the biggest thing I learned was that was humility. And I think that is really what, I mean, that is a quality which is coming out not only in Brijmohan ji himself, but also in Sunil. And I mean, in many ways, Sunil, you remind me of your father. So, I mean, I think if that is a tribute, then this is the tribute that I can.
I highly take it as a compliment. Thank you.
So I have no questions for you.
Okay, thanks. Sunil, one question which some people have been asking is about, in this entire family thing and work, even for professionals, how does one try and, sort of balance the work, the family, the social life, and, all of that?
So that's actually a very important question you're asking, Harsh. So people say that once you get involved in any business, you must put your lifeblood into it. You must put your everything into it to make it successful. At the same time, we often criticize ourselves as Indians for not having the desire or knowledge or experience to retire from anything that we do. Because we've not built alternate interests. Anytime an Indian retires from whatever she or he is doing, they tend to collapse completely. Very few Indians actually develop alternate interest. And this is most common worldwide. So creating a good balance in your life is actually critical. And this is now being, there's lots of experiment, lots of research has now been done by psychotherapists and analysts and social scientists now to say that it's absolutely essential, even when you deploy all your energy into business, at the same time, creating a relationship and a communication with your family and friends and having an alternate interest. All of these are essential, which is why I was going to make 2 points to you. I don't know if I've answered your question, but I will make 2 points, which I think are critical, since you have I'm told over 1,000 people or something online right now. That we live in a nation, and I've made this in AIMA many, many times. I want to repeat it because there may be some new people. We live in a nation where there are 200+ million people who do not have the wherewithal even to get 2 square meals in a day. We are so blessed, so fortunate that we have access to opportunities. We have the ability to say yes and no to things, that I will do this, I will not do this. And we make choices ourselves every day because we've had the education, we've got businesses, we've got friends, we've got good families who support us. I think it's important that we learn to reach out to those less fortunate, even in our own self-enlightened interest. If you can turn those into, forget for a minute a charity, look at it as an economy and a business. If you can turn those same people into consumers, you will create the world's largest growth market, besides doing the most amazing social good that the planet has ever seen. And then and only then will India get to where we want India to be. The second point I'd like to make is, and this goes back to your point again, of our interest in business, that we must also keep an interest in the nation, in the softer aspects of a civilization. Our history, our culture, our sociology, our music, our theater, our artisanal skills. These are some of the richest parts of the heritage that we have as people, as a nation, as communities. And unfortunately, if you read a report done by Dasra a few years ago, it said in the last 30 years, 30% of India's cultural heritage has died. Because we are not only not protecting it and not growing it, we are allowing it to die because we are so busy doing, if you're in one direction of building our economy or building doctors or engineers, etc., that we've forgotten that to be a successful nation and a civilization, the softer aspects are equally, if not more important. So I would urge all those who are here today and a part of AIMA's session, that for you to become wholesome leaders, please do focus on these 2 things, is reaching out in your own way, in whatever area you think you can. You want to help in education, you want to help in healthcare, you want to help in something else, please do that. And start with people around you, the people who work in your homes. Look at their children. Are they getting educated? Are they getting healthcare? And the people next to them, then the next ones. Build a circle, concentric circle just around you of goodness and prosperity. And also please focus on the softer aspects, because that does not work without support and patronage worldwide. So it is a heritage that we have. It is something we borrowed from our children. So it is our responsibility to leave it to them in better shape than we got it. So thank you very much, Harsh.
Sunil, I think that was a great answer. The last part particularly. And if I can sort of read a little bit in between of what you are saying, or expand that lexicon. I think all of us who are privileged and who are on, for example, people on this call, right? Why are people interested in AIMA? It's not just for professional career growth, but it's also to give back and contribute to the management. For example, the management movement, new ideas. So I think some of us who are fortunate perhaps have a responsibility, if I may go ahead and say, not just an interest, but a responsibility to give back and also take interest in how our country does. And I think you were being politically correct when you talked about, you talked about the social and cultural aspects, but I'm not saying we become political activists, but there are policy making, issues. And then tomorrow, if we complain about policy and we don't even make an effort to say, this is our suggestion, this is how we should do this, these are our voices. Whether you're heard or not heard is not important, eventually.
Correct.
But I think it's a responsibility. But that's a great point that you made, Sunil. And thank you very much for this. I know we have run over time, and there are many more people still. But every good thing has to come to an end. And once again, a fabulous session. I guess a record number of people here, but more importantly, the candor of your response and the clarity with which you brought this out, at least has been an outstanding session. And if I may say, perhaps one of the best that I have attended.
Thank you.
Clearly, and I don't say this as a friend. I mean, I can say many things, but you talked about social, things beyond work life, and I feel again, personalizing it, I feel fortunate to have been able to spend time with you as a friend, travel together, and maybe that will be, Sunil, a part of our retirement plans as well. So great.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Yes.
Rekha.
Thanks
everyone.
Munjal.
Sorry. Thanks once again for everybody for having participated enthusiastically. Sorry, I didn't call out on a lot of people and also your names, but I think we got a great session. You'll agree. Rekha, sorry. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Munjal. If you see the comments in the chat window, you will see for yourself that what Mr. Singhania has said is very true. I think everybody enjoyed it. They think it was a brilliant session. I keep seeing the word brilliant all the time in the chat window. As I said, we've had a record number of people.
I can't see it. I'm not using a laptop. I'm using some very technical
So I'll send the comments.
Which doesn't show any of that stuff.
I will send the comments to you. But we've had a record number of people joining us on the on AIMA Zoom and also on a social media. We had over 1,500 people. Wow. And this is not counting the hero social media, because we don't know the numbers there, but I'm sure they are equally high there. So it's been one of the record numbers. Thanks a lot. It was, I think, a lot of learning. It was a brilliant speech as usual. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. And I enjoyed the questions and the comments. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thanks,